Thanks a lot. We have Richard Schaefer here. We're in New Jersey ahead of the fantastic World Boxing Super Series card this Saturday. Have young gun Murat Gassiev, 24 years old, trained by Abel Sanchez, trainer of Triple G, against very respected former Polish champion Krzysztof Wlodarczyk. I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about the card this weekend.
Well, with Wlodarczyk, you have one of the most legendary fighters coming out of Poland fighting, a two-time cruiserweight champion, trying to upset the apple cart, as they say, beating the young gun with Murat Gassiev. Murat Gassiev, big puncher, 24 wins, 17 knockouts, only 24 years young, trained by one of the best trainers in the sport. You mentioned Abel Sanchez up at the Summit in Big Bear, training alongside Triple G, and actually a lot of media members, a lot of fans have already made comparisons between Gassiev and Triple G, calling Gassiev the next Triple G. Triple G is older, I think he's almost 10 years older than Gassiev is. So this is Gassiev's opportunity to really impress by defending his title here at the Prudential Center on Saturday. There's going to be lots at stake. It's not only the prize money, the richest boxing tournament in the history of the sport, but of course it's about, for Gassiev as well, moving on to the semi-finals and then eventually to the finals. And equally important, to make a statement. He wants to make a statement here in front of a U.S. audience.
So, World Boxing Super Series, at least for me, kind of came out of nowhere earlier this year. I was very surprised when you had that big unveiling press conference. The concept seemed very new and original. We all enjoyed the draft gala this summer in Monaco. Just wondering if you can talk about how the reception has been for the tournament, if it's met your expectations, how the world of boxing is receiving the World Boxing Super Series.
Well, when we initially unveiled it, including a press conference here in Manhattan at the Pierre Hotel in the spring, there were a lot of skeptics. And I can understand that. You know, it was something new. It was something very ambitious. It was not just another tournament, it was the greatest tournament, named after the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali, with the biggest and greatest prize money. And the goal was very ambitious, to try to get the best fighters in the divisions which would be featured to sign up and participate in the tournament. So I can understand that there were a lot of skeptics. Are they going to be able to get the funding? Are they going to be able to pull it off? Are they going to be able to get the fighters? How are the promoters or managers from those fighters going to react? Are they going to let them fight them in the tournament? On and on and on. And I'm very happy to see that this tournament has now become reality. It speaks to the quality of the people behind it. These are people which have tremendous track record in sports, in putting together a tournament, including the biggest soccer tournament, the biggest annual soccer tournament, the Champions League, where you have the big European clubs compete against each other. So these are pros, and they pulled it off. And the fighters did sign up, particularly on the cruiserweight side, all 4 world champions. I mean, imagine that. It's not just a tournament now, it's a unification tournament, and the winner who comes out of the cruiserweight part of the tournament will be the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world. I mean, that's amazing. It's an amazing achievement, particularly for the first year of the World Boxing Super Series. Venues, the fights have been taking place all over the world, from London to Berlin to Schwerin to Riga to San Antonio, and now here in the Prudential Center in New Jersey. So I'm very happy to be able to land that fight here. I hope that all the Polish fans and the boxing fans from and around New Jersey are going to come out and support this great card with Wlodarczyk and with Sulecki. We are going Masternacht as well. We are seeing 3 really of the best fighters Poland has ever had, and to see all 3 of them in one card is very, very special. I know it's about the cruiserweight quarterfinal, but what I do want to point out as well, there's a young Polish fighter on there who is undefeated, 25-0, Sulecki, and I want fans to really keep an eye out for him as well, because I do believe he will have an opportunity to prove himself and become the best in his respective division. So very excited to showcase a little bit of everything. There's some great young rising stars from my company, from the Ringstar stable, on display as well. Particularly Manny Powell, who is fighting out, who is undefeated with 4 fights and 4 wins. Great young prospect, like a Marvin Hagler kind of type. And then the most talked about U.S. Olympian in the heavyweight division, Efe Ajagba, who won actually the biggest punch, the biggest knockout of the Olympics last year, 2016 Rio, and he is going to be here and showcasing his talent. And I can assure you, you will hear a lot about Efe Ajagba in the months and years to come. He will be heavyweight champion of the world, and you have an opportunity to see him here in his 2nd or 3rd fight.
Do you have time for a few more?
Sure.
Okay, so you touched on a few things I'd like to follow up on. So something we've really liked at our site is the international nature of the tournament. We're getting hits from Latvia, Poland, the UK. It's really fun just seeing all that traffic come in. Our primary writer for the cruiserweights is in Russia. His name's Lev Kuzin. Our primary writer for the super middleweights is in England. So I wonder if you can talk more about that international concept. It seems historically boxing has usually been based on one television market, and it seems like this is really picking up everywhere.
Well, the people, the organizers behind it, they really understand the TV landscape, and what they wanted to do is they wanted to create really a product made for TV for a global audience, where that the fight, if a fight is announced, the fight is going to happen. If a fighter gets injured or something, there will always be a standby, a reserve fighter to jump in. But if we say that there's going to be a fight, that particular night there's going to be a fight. And that's something which TV in the past has struggled a bit, because with fights falling off and then events being cancelled and things like that. So that was a bit an issue for boxing. The second one was that the fights always start at the same time, and at a time which is convenient for a global audience as well. So you have to, maybe it's a little bit late in the US, but it's accommodating the UK market, the European markets, the Asian markets as well. So it really is a made-for-TV product, and the boxing is without question, next to soccer, or as they call it in Europe, football, the most global of all sports, because it has champions from all over the world, from all continents. And yet there has never really been a signature tournament, a global tournament which truly embraces the sport on a global basis and is all-inclusive. It doesn't matter about promoters and managers and fighters. It's pretty simple. The best fighting the best. Winners move on. Losers go home. It's transparent, it's easy to follow, and there's a lot of money at stake. So it really is, in the end, prize fighting, and this tournament brought the prize back to fighting and really elevated the sport on a global basis. And it's refreshing to see that TV networks from all over the world, those who were skeptical in the beginning, are starting to follow the concept, are starting to show interest, and are signing on as World Boxing Super Series TV partners. And I think the first year is always the most challenging one, because it was a new idea, it was a new concept, there were question marks behind it, but the way so far the tournament has delivered outside of the ring, and most importantly inside of the ring, with the quality of fights and matchups, I think the future for the World Boxing Super Series is very bright.
Okay, so another question here about your Ringstar stable. So you had, coming out of the last Olympics, probably the most ambitious slate of signings. It was very,
Yes.
Tony Yoka, Carlos Balderas. So, I know Tony Yoka just returned recently. I have a question about that. So, just wondering the philosophy for developing fighters out of the Olympics. So, both of them, I believe, have fought twice.
Yes.
Sometimes the first year fighters come out of the Olympics, they fight many times. Just wondering if what your philosophy is on developing fighters right as they turn.
First of all, we've been in 2017 has been a fantastic year for boxing. I would say anybody would agree with me on that. But what we've seen as well is it was as well a year of many great fighters retiring. Whether it was an Andre Ward or a Timothy Bradley or Juan Manuel Marquez or Floyd Mayweather or a Manny Pacquiao was close to it. I mean, there's a lot of fighters which called it a day, and that's the way sports are, not just boxing. So I think it's important to keep an eye on the future, and for me, signing the best young prospects was really my main goal, and I think that's exactly what we accomplished. You want to keep these, whether if it's by the way, it's a geographical diversification, whether if it's you mentioned Tony Yoka, the super heavyweight gold medalist from France, or whether if it's Suleiman Sissoko, the silver medalist from France, or Joe Joyce, the silver medalist super heavyweight from Rio as well, British guy, or whether if it was Willie Hutchinson, who didn't go to the Olympic, was the amateur youth world champion, the most decorated fighter ever to come out of Scotland, or whether if it was Carlos Barleras, the most sought after, talked about US Olympian, and the list goes on and on. F.A. Jacques, but the most talked about heavyweight, the guy who won the knockout of the Rio Olympic tournament, who is, by the way, featured here on Saturday night at the Prudential Center. So I really have a Mantis Stanionis trained by Freddie Roach, who's quickly establishing himself in and around Los Angeles, and just a sensational prospect. Money Powell from board of Georgia and Alabama, like a Hagler kind of style fighter. Just a great young stable, and these are the kind of guys I want to build up quick. Some of them are more advanced than others because today's amateurs are used to fight without headgear. So that's not like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when amateur boxing was with headgear, and then once they took the headgear off, that was the big news. That was a big change from going amateur to pro. These amateurs today are used to fight without headgear and are used to compete as well in that AIBA sanctioned World Series of Boxing, and so they're very active and so on. So for them to make the jump from amateur to pro is much easier than it used to be, and they are much more advanced. That means you can move them much quicker from turning pro, becoming a prospect, to a challenger, and eventually to a world champion. That thing which used to take 3-4 years, 20 fights, is really cut down. You can see some of those fighters fight in their 6th, 7th fight for world titles potentially. And others need a little bit more time. So we want to keep them busy. Ideally in the first year, fight 6-7 times, 5-6 times the second year and on, to have them ready to really challenge for world titles very quickly. Sometimes though, with these young fighters in the very beginning of their careers, as they start fighting in smaller gloves, because remember the amateur gloves are bigger, more padded than the pro gloves, they are starting to experience some problems with their hands. They need professional wrapping. So there's a lot of things in the beginning of a young fighter's career which he really has to pay attention to. And we had in our stable a couple of the fighters having issues with their hands. They have been addressed. They're getting better wrapping, and they had to rest their hands a little bit. So that's why some of them we've seen fighting more than others. But generally speaking, we want to keep them very active.
Okay, so then I have one last question, sort of a business question. So I believe Gassiev and Sulecki have come up, at least recently, fighting on Premier Boxing Champions cards. And you've promoted PBC cards recently. Just wondering if you can talk about your relationship with Al Haymon, PBC. I mean, I know this is a separate venture, World Boxing Super Series. Just wondering if you can talk about that.
Well, as a promoter, I'm a boxing promoter, but I'm a fan as well. And while I sort of like have under the Ringstar umbrella different businesses, where I promote events, like for example PBC events, where I don't have the fighters signed to a promotional agreement, or for that matter, a World Boxing Super Series event where I don't have these fighters signed to promotional deals either. So I basically promote the event and promote the sport, and that's what I really do: promote the sport of boxing. But then I have the young fighters as well, which are signed to Ringstar, and which I will, obviously, which I build up. So I promote my own guys, I promote for other entities like World Boxing Super Series and PBC, and that's really the philosophy I follow. I have a great friendship and relationship with Haymon, who I think is a tremendous asset to the sport of boxing, and you see it with his fighters, the fighters which fight under the PBC umbrella, fighters which Mr. Haymon advises. They're very pleased with that arrangement and very pleased with that relationship, because they make a lot of money and they get great exposure to be on national network television. I mean, we've seen it this past weekend, where there was a PBC card on Fox, and with Abner Mares and with Leo Santa Cruz fighting separate fights, and the audience was over 1.5 million homes. So that's fantastic. To be able to fight in front of that kind of audience is better than most other platforms offer. And if you are with PBC and Vidal, you get this kind of exposure, which ultimately elevates these fighters. And so it's a pleasure to work with Al and with PBC on those events.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. We're really looking forward to the card at the Prudential Center this Saturday on the Audience Network in the U.S.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.